Hey, vinyl community, it's Mazzy here, and I was listening to a podcast just last night by Rick Rubin, the producer who was the co-founder of Def Jam Records, who worked with Public Enemy and the Beastie Boys. Later, he would really merge and go on to producing heavy metal records, reunion albums for Black Sabbath. He, resuscitated Johnny Cash's career. Worked with Donovan even on a great album that no one's ever heard, it seemingly. But he was interviewing Flying Lotus. Flying Lotus is a producer, hip hop artist, jazz, fusion, electronica, merging of styles. And I got this album maybe 5-6 years ago when it came out, and it's a beautiful record. It's undefinable in a way because it mixes soul and jazz and avant-garde and classical and just a little of everything. And I really like this stuff. And I like this stuff. I was thinking of sort of the yin-yang of when I play music. I was thinking, what music do I love to come home and put on and play and just crank it really loud? And a lot of times it's punk music, certain rock and roll records when I'm in the mood. But I like really kind of spacey music and a lot of bass and deep sounds and great production. And I find music like this is the type of music that I can play really, really loud, or I can play it on a Sunday morning, Saturday night really soft. So that's the yin-yang thing about this. But listening to this interview, and you can find it on YouTube or podcast, he talks about his production style, and during the pandemic, he's really working on some project. He's worked with several of the artists I'm going to show, but I decided to show a selection of albums that I really haven't spent a lot of time with, or a genre I haven't spent a lot of time with here in the vinyl community. And it's a mix of psychedelic and electronic, and a little bit of soul and hip hop. Now, I'm that generation, we missed the boat growing up with hip hop, so I'm not as well versed as a lot of you all are, who are in your 40s, early 50s, who kind of grew up with that as a part of your music. We all kind of show what we know, what we like, what we grew up with. But over the last few years, a lot of this music I'm going to show tonight is a mix of things. In fact, there are several bands that started out like rock bass guitar bands in the UK or in America, or even like Psych folk bands and that whole Americana, that really shifted to electronica, neoclassical, neo-soul in a way, to the dismay of some of their loyal followers, especially a lot of white guys who just maybe aren't into the merging of things when they start adding electronics and phony drums and dance loops and the thing. So I'm going to show records that really defy genres in a way, but are in kind of that overview based on how I feel about this. Now, a lot of this music, you could go back to a lot of different roots. You can go back to John Coltrane and the spiritual side of John Coltrane, Alice Coltrane. You can go back to the electronic Miles Davis of In a Silent Way, and obviously Bitches Brew, and the stuff he did live at Fillmore later. Just the jamming on, repetitive things that are cut pasted together. In those days, literally cut and pasted. Now, mostly, everything's done, with Pro Tools or in the studio and digital editing and things. So without further ado, 4 minutes in, let's show some records. In the background, if you can hear, this is more of a modern classical piece. This is from about, this is like the late 90s, but this is Rachel Grimes, the Rachels, music for Egon Schiele. Really piano player, minimalist, beautiful records. I have a vinyl version of this too, but the digital stuff of Rachel Grimes and Rachel's, kind of a modernist classical arranger, performer. So that's going to play in the background as we go. Now, I like the idea of rock and roll mixing with this stuff. And this is a record that, it's a gray market or black market, however you want to say it, record. To me, I'm starting this off because I had gotten a CD of this record, and it's really a bootleg, but you could buy it in stores and you could download it originally. And this is Danger Mouse. This is the Grey album. What this is, if you don't know, and this pissed off a lot of Beatle fans, and I wish this was officially released. I wish the Beatles and Apple had the balls to go to Danger Mouse and Jay-Z and put out the Grey album. What it is, it's a mashup. Remember mashups were kind of big, 15, 20 years ago, where you take two different things and mash them up and mix them up. And there was several years that was kind of a hot thing, some officially, some unofficially. It mixes segments of the Beatles' White Album, of course, with Jay-Z's Black Album. And it's brilliant. My son and I used to play this in the car all the time, and I just loved it. I mean, again, a lot of the pure Beatleists just hate this stuff, and they really go against this kind of genre and this mashup thing. But I think it's a pretty cool record. So this is obviously a Grey Market remastered version of the Grey album, produced by Danger Mouse. This is a hip-hop soul record, kind of neo-soul. She actually defined and started neo-soul, and that was Erykah Badu. This came out about 5 years ago, and what this is, she did a series of these sort of homemade phone recording type things. They're called, let's see, But You Can't Use My Phone, Control Freak Records. Really, really beautiful record, very soulful. Obviously not as mixed as some of these other things in terms of mixing like psychedelic or jazz or fusion, but just a really wonderful record. Great, great, great package to Erykah Badu. This might have been a record store day, maybe not, I don't remember. 4 years ago, 2016, on Motown, a division of UMG. Everything's part of UMG if it's not Warner Brothers or Sony. But this is something, again, this is a good record to blast. And, a lot of these records are good for parties and socializing too, but just beautifully recorded, even though they're, low, technically maybe lo-fi, but they don't sound lo-fi. So Erykah Badu. Mixing in a whole different area, a band, I only have this one album of theirs, and I love this record. It goes into sort of psychedelic, classical, independent, a group from Austin, Texas. Explosions in the Sky, the album Wilderness. Got some psychedelic and classical overtones, some very symphonic things in a classical way. A gorgeous record that is one of those records that's impossible to open. But so I'm not going to open it. But gorgeous record, beautiful album design. I could include this on my album cover things, but I love this. Now, of course, I'm going to get into Radiohead. There's a lot of reasons to get into Radiohead, but first I'm going to show this, Atoms for Peace, Amok. This is the collaboration with Flea, the bass player of the Chili Peppers, and Tom York, and the producer, it's got Joey Warnaker on drums, the son of the great Lenny Warnaker, the great Warner Brothers producer, and it has Nigel Godrich, who produced a lot of these fusion periods, electronic things for Radiohead as well. Really, really good. This is one of those records, I believe I can't remember if it's 45 or 33, but the first week I had it, I played it at the wrong speed and I didn't know the difference. So you can tell the type of record it is, because Tom York's vocals tend to be really high and moody and ethereal. Another thing about all these records, a lot of them have that sort of moody, ethereal, it's like space jazz, art pop, electronica, spiritual. It's just a really fusion of music. The other one that I'll show that's very similar, his most recent album that was amongst my favorites of last year, is Anima. And it's Tom York. Again, great electronic beats, music, vocals, lyrics, and haunting melodies as well. But just, I love Tom York. There's a whole theme that goes through some of these records, especially a few of them, but this is one too. I first got into Caribou when he did this sort of psychedelic, moody type of thing, but really good. And a lot of these bands I found over the last several years has really merged their music and got more into bass, drums, this synthesized sound that's more of a repetitive, more of a dance feel. So there's a lot of older audiences, or again, a lot of fans who were into these bands when they were doing that kind of, guitar-based or psychedelic-based, but this is quite not like that, but it gets into this more repetitive, I don't want to say drone thing, but electronic. But it took a while for me to like this kind of stuff too, because I also was disappointed by some of these artists that were doing what seemingly sounded like, hip hop dance music instead of rock and roll. The old adage that went back to Decca Records in 1962 to the Beatles. They turned the Beatles down because groups of guitars are on the way out. Well, a lot of people feel that way now who are into these guitar-based bands like Radiohead once was. Maybe not Caribou so much, but some of the other ones. And now they're doing this mix of electronica. But it can be really, really beautiful if you allow yourself. Another, to me, one of the great artists of the last 30 years, 25 years, whatever, is Bjrk. I believe these are her two last albums. This is definitely her newest album. And this is called Utopia, and she is the true auteur. It's all about cover design, persona, electronic, bass, vocal, tape loops, all kinds of things like that. This is Biophilia, another gorgeous record too. But I think this stuff fits really well for this type of theme. Again, these bands really mix up, It's a lot of, also white artists bringing on, black music and jazz and hip hop and beat music and just running with it in a different way. Of course, probably one of the most famous records of the last 5 years that did this, that really mixed the jazz thing, some really out there jazz, is David Bowie with Black Star. When I first heard the song, I think the first song that released in advance of this that was on a combo greatest hits before this album, a different version or a different mix of Sue. What's it called? It's called Sue, or In a Season of Crime. An amazing thing. Again, another influence. A lot of the 70s jazz fusion of John McLaughlin, of Weather Report, of Jocko, and these great mixes of rock and jazz. Tony Williams, Lifeline, and those bands. You can hear the influences in a lot of this stuff too. This is a fantastic record. I'm sure you all know it, but to me, this is one of the best records of the last decade. Might even be the best record of the 2010s, possibly. I show this briefly in the cover. What a mix, what a brilliant record. Beyonce's Lemonade. This came out 4 years ago. One of the best albums, again, in the last decade as well. Mixing, this mixes folk and rock and hip hop and soul music and electronic music. And it's just a gorgeous, gorgeous recording. Beautiful vocals, beautiful recording. What I like about a lot of this music, it's not as segregated as some other types of music. And I know that's kind of, maybe the hip thing or the popular thing to say right now, but it really takes influences by a lot of things. But this is a great record, This also, brought the white audiences over, even though they were already into Beyonce too, but it's a gorgeous record. Tame Impala. I first got into Tame Impala when he was doing, again, the more psychedelic sounds, and then these two records. This record, I think, pissed some people off who are into the more psychedelic sounds, but it came more almost like drone-ish, repetitive electronica. But again, beautiful record, beautiful cover. Lonerism, Tame Impala. I'm gonna really, beat a dead horse with these bands that started out with the freak folk Americana and really merged into something different. The two in a row here are, to me, for some reason, I always get them confused. I think because I got turned on to them around the same time, and maybe 10 years ago, give or take. And that's The National, These are the last two albums that are very mixed with a lot of a great personnel, large group of people mixed in, and gorgeous records, electronic, folk, rock and roll, but not, you almost want to, again, I have no idea what I'm going to call this video. You already know before I do because you saw the title and you jumped in apparently. Hopefully you stay in because there's some amazing music here, but The National is one. And of course the other one that I stick in right behind them or right next to them along is Bonaver. Started out solo Wisconsin, I Lost My Girlfriend for Emma record, and now is sort of this studio-based entourage of producers, editors, mixologists, musicians, putting together tape loops and electronic blips and blaps and burps. And again, some people may not love this kind of stuff, but these are gorgeous records. I'm not a headphone person anymore, but I suspect these would be amazing headphone records. This is the most recent. This is, I forgot the name of the record, Bonaver. Check them out. I get them kind of, it's funny, the thing about their last few albums, I kind of get them confused in which one's which, and it almost doesn't matter. I put them on for a mood. I think that's what's good about this type of music. You put it on for a mood and just let it play. It's not your typical electronic music, but I really am attracted to editing and experimentation, out there, a little avant-garde, yet accessible melodies thrown in. And I think almost all these records do have wonderful accessible melodies mixed in with all the drum and bass beats and tape loops and things. So Bonaver. I promised early on that I would mention Radiohead because Radiohead, I'm not going to show the obvious one, which is Kid A. Kid A changed things for me. I had heard OK Computer, I liked it, and I heard Fake Plastic Trees, and they were a guitar-based band. And a lot of people jumped off when Kid A came out. A lot of people like me jumped in wholeheartely, and I really jumped in big time when Kid A came. And I follow them, everything they do. I love their collaboration with Nigel Godrich. I love this album, In Rainbows. Amazing production. This is a vinyl and CD expanded deluxe edition that came out directly from the label. And then it came in a slipcase like this. Again, beautiful music. And the other one that came out on a double 10-inch is In Limbs. Amazing stuff. Came with this newspaper, King of Limbs. It's funny when you think about it, how quaint and analog is putting out a newspaper with this digitally manufactured object of art and music. King of Limbs. God, beautiful record. Again, some people jumped off because it's not the Benz and it's not OK Computer. It's something different, but I think it's gorgeous music. Now I'm going to end up with more of the jazzy side of it. To me, one of the most creative artists that's out there right now in jazz. Overwhelming in his creations because he puts out every few years so much at once, and that's Kamasi Washington. Again, getting away from the electric, although there are electric overtones. Out there, fusion jazz, very, the parent heir in a way of the John Coltrane, Alice Coltrane. Sometimes this stuff is so over the top with singers and musicians and larger members, or more members, more musicians, adding, jumping on the pile. This is the Epic, and this came out in 2015. Brilliant record, overwhelming in a way because there's so much to it. It's a 3-record set, but it's spiritual, spatial jazz. It fits in with all this other music. Again, none of these records are alike, but I'm trying to put these together in like a sort of the planets, the spirituality of this music in an electronic way. I hope I'm expressing that well, and I just hope that, you know, some of the younger people get into this stuff, and the older people. There's that sort of middle period of people that are open to experimentation, and this stuff. A lot of these records, I think, most of these records take time, and you have to sort of nurture them in a way. You have to listen to them, and you know, as John Lennon said from the Tibetan Book of the Dead, relax all thoughts, surrender to the void. Is that what he said? Relax all thoughts. You know, tomorrow never knows. And then his most recent, and again, over the top. Again, this is heaven and earth. In a lot of ways, this music is definitely for heaven and earth. And this is this is either 3, 4, or 5 records. And the funny thing is, in both the CD and the LP version of it, there was a hidden pocket. So if you just opened the record for the first few weeks, months, years, you would never know there's an extra record hidden, sealed in here. What a concept. Talk about conceptual art. This has 2 pieces, Earth and Heaven, and they're long-winded. This is from 2018. That go on and on in different ways. Great saxophone player, great composer, great musician. Kamasai, Washington. So from Flying Lotus to Kamasai, Washington, to Bjrk, Bowie, The National. You know, it's all great music. It's open up to something a little different this time, and I hope you guys check some of this stuff out, because it's really beautiful. But again, let yourself go with it. Okay, Nazi loves you.